Hi, good afternoon. My name is Laura, and this is my exceptionalities final, where I will be presenting information regarding the class and what I have learned in this semester's span. Here I have a presentation of competency areas that I feel I have mastered and will support the learning of the students as I have gathered information and processed information. I feel strongly about competency area number 32, where it says discuss methods of intervention and teaching strategies to use with children with autism. Because the proficiency and the prevalence of autism is about 1 to 50 for every child, I feel this is a very important area for educators to be well versed in. The interventions and teaching strategies begin with early identification. It is a critical element because we are building language and social skills at such an early developmental time frame. The earlier detections always support the growth of the child. So this would be conducted by a medical professional. There's signs that they look for, and there's things that we can note as educators, such as, being in a repetitive motor movement, which is like flapping and things of that nature, language delays, social delays where they don't really socialize with children or adults very well, difficulties in pretend play, difficulties imitating adult behavior, and also kind of stepping outside of themselves, thinking or understanding what others see or their perspective is also a big indicator or one of those cues that would push for further analysis or to start with interventions and specific targeted teaching strategies. Upon my reading, there is the UCLA Young Autism Project, which uses standard applied behavioral analysis, where they would provide rewards for positive behavior, and thus repeating the process of rewarding those positive behaviors in hopes that the child will continue using and engaging in those positive behaviors. Similar to this, piggybacking off of the UCLA Young Autism Project is the pivotal response model, which is very similar to that. However, their aim is to move towards self-management, self-initiation, self-motivation, and to translate all these positive skills that they've learned through multiple areas in most situations they encounter. Another teaching strategy is the teach. Two C's there, which uses pictures and visuals to communicate with children of autism. And their focus also is to educate children in domestic skills and independent living, which are, again, critical when social deficits are present or being able to relate to others is present. So building these strong skills would facilitate further development for the child into adulthood. There's also the LEAP strategy, which is more of independent play and independent social interactions through more of a naturalistic engagement. And here, these routines and these engagements facilitated by an adult or, monitored by an adult would improve the social skills through peer mediation. So adults are there, but it's peer-on-peer encounters to help these students build those social language and independent skills that they need. The second competency area I noted here is number 6, explore assistive technology and their use in inclusive settings. Again, because there are so many needs and so many children that require extra support, I felt assistive technology is a biggie as well, because we are going to have children that need something simple as a fidgeter, right? Or like a modified seat for the child. So being able to use assistive technology as it's designed, which is to gain access to information, is critical for us educators to be well versed in it, and how the application is processed, how it functions itself, how it applies to the child, how that works, whether it's a low, middle, or high-tech assistive technology, being well aware of its uses and how to apply it in the classroom is very critical for, in my opinion, for an educator to have. Also, being well versed in it and being able to employ it into an inclusive setting also requires educators in the IEP, IFSP team to know what the child's environments are going to look like, whether it's at school, at home, and other places, and determine what areas this device will be most helpful and how to bridge it across multiple settings. So like I said, being able to understand assistive technology and how to employ it, I feel like it's very critical. Therefore, I chose this as a competency area to focus on. Lastly, number 35, which is explore accommodations and assistive technology that can be used with children with visual impairments. This is a biggie for me because I feel like it would be a challenging time, I feel, if I've never had a child with a visual impairment, to all of a sudden have to modify, accommodate, build, and teach a child with visual impairments. I feel it would be would initially put me out of a comfort zone. But I feel like building those strong conjunctions with an IEP team, we can come up with things and not necessarily relying on my lack of knowledge, but utilizing their knowledge and their skill set, to enhance and build accommodations and utilize assistive technology properly, I think would be the best way to approach this. But I do know because they are limited in one of the five senses to employ the other ones. So using maybe auditory materials, whether it's audiobooks or being more clear, more precise, or having things repeated for them, whether it's whatever instruction would be helpful, as well as using tactile materials to help them better understand the information presented to them. And again, that would be audiobooks, Braille and Braille readers, or Braille converters would be another type of assistive technology that I felt would support children with visual impairments in the classroom. Here I will present what I would do as an educator for the child in the classroom and educational setting and as a whole. As an educator, I feel I would need to be very familiar and will be familiar with the laws protecting the child's rights, especially those of disabilities. I think it's very critical to be vigilant of how their rights are being protected, how their learning opportunities are being presented and preserved, how best practices would be employed for a specific child, and even staying current with community leaders and members that might lack the awareness of how it's being employed in the classroom, whether it's a good or negative thing. Being able to be a voice for that and advocate for the actual implementation in the classroom, I feel is very important as well. And also being able to partner with parents and resource centers and provide them with that information, I feel would be, again, a critical element of being an advocate and educator outside of the classroom. And within the classroom, again, building those strong partnerships with the IEP, IFSP teams, and advocating for the families too, to be a critical element to the formation of their studies would be a biggie as well. I think most importantly in the classroom, I will strive to be a welcoming area for the child and the families, and for making sure that each child feels special and supported and welcomed in the classroom, whether they have a specialty or not. I feel those are very important areas for us to bridge for the families. I chose to speak about cerebral palsy and how it relates to the classroom. There is a small note on how and what it is, which is more of a motor disability. It's one of the most common motor disabilities. It doesn't, deteriorate or get worse over time. It's just how it is, and it occurs in different manners. There is 2 assistive technologies I chose, which is an adaptive utensil, because these are, we gotta eat, whether we know how to write or do anything else. Eating is so critical. So, or feeding themselves. I feel like this is a very important tool for educators to be aware that there is, and how to modify those. Also, gait trainer, because the cerebral palsy affects different areas. Walking, posture, standing, building those muscles can be supported with a gait trainer. Adaptations for a child with cerebral palsy would include just being able to move in the classroom, so making it wheelchair accessible, or just whatever physical assistive technology they're using would be one of those. Also, being able to allow the child to engage in a lesson outside of physical, whether they cannot write or move or select, what can they use that is able or feasible for them. So maybe verbal responses would be another adaptation to the lesson plan. Learning activities I chose here just be music, allowing children to be able to move and enjoy music with whatever ability, disability they have, would be one of those that is critical in the classroom as well. I also chose to enhance fine motor and brain connection. So I chose nesting cups and sorting items. That way the child is able to connect pieces together and build on those connectors between the body and the brain. I also selected deaf and hard of hearing. This is impacted by many factors, environmental and genetics. Testing can be done at birth or later on in the years. And assistive technology I chose for children that are deaf and hard of hearing are implants. That way we're aware of what those two are, which is implants or hearing aids. One goes directly in the ear and it connects to the auditory nerve. One just and hearing aids just amplify sounds, and they're able to hear sounds, distinguish better sounds between speech and in the environment. Adaptations for the classroom would be providing visuals for the child for changes or anything of that nature. To be able to participate in the learning environment, along with sign languages to back it up. Another modification would be just being present and being physically seen by the child. I know sometimes we want to turn and look at our lesson plan, but just being aware the child needs to visually see us would also support the learning in the classroom. A learning activity that I chose for a child that's deaf or hard of hearing is just being able to facilitate upcoming events. I chose, for example, here a birthday party for a young age of 3. Being able to engage in back and forth conversations, practicing using words that they might use, like happy birthday, thank you, more cake, things of that nature, by providing opportunities to explore these would support the child. Also, I chose areas to enhance the other, or to support the other senses that they're using, such as a cooking activity for young 2s, visuals to engage in what we were talking about, and able provide these materials where they can taste, smell, feel, even though they're not able to hear activities. And the last disability I chose is learning disability, because it is so broad and it encompasses a lot of areas of academics. With their inability to process information, I felt this is an important one to choose on. Assistive technology I chose here are freeform databases, because retention and explanation are hard to connect with that processing. Here they're able to jot things down quickly and pull it back quickly, versus writing it down and losing that piece of paper or not being able to form those connections. Also, for older children, electronic math worksheets, which is kind of the same concept as the freeform database, where the numbers are aligned, presented, and provided in the structure of math when the child's not being able to connect it. And it also reads it to the child if they need auditory support. Adaptations for learning disabilities is being able to just to simply structure things in small groups by one-on-one or peer-supported lessons. The child might be able to have that reinforcement of what is happening. And also because they do struggle with processing information, as an educator, highlighting and facilitating the learning. If this instruction is elaborate or has multiple steps, highlight each step, presented in ways they can slowly digest it, or keywords, cut, search, or whatever that highlighted thing would be. A learning activity for children with disabilities would be facilitating social interactions. So here I chose for 4-year-olds reading a story about anger and frustration and socializing in that manner, presenting emotional cards or things that could support a feeling and identifying a feeling. And then on a large piece of butcher paper, for example, being able to do positive, negative outcomes and just visually represent what the children are speaking about. Lastly, I also felt that because there is a processing delay, that incorporating physical activity to support academics would be big. Here, my lesson is letter recognition through physical movement. So the teacher would verbally say the letter, which would be processed in the mind, and the child would race towards that letter. However, to modify for a child with learning disabilities, the teacher would also visually present the letter and repeat the name and have the child race to it. That way it doesn't feel like a lose-lose, but they're all allowed and encouraged to reinforce this learning through multiple venues. Thank you so much for your time. Lastly, I have the reference page of all the information I gathered. Most of the information I verbalized comes from the textbook Educating Exceptional Children. So thank you so much for that time.